Hi there, I'm Joanne Cameron, and I'm the teacher of the course Daniel's Story, the Sealed Book. Now, this week we're going to be looking at Daniel chapter 8, and we've called this A Charging Ram and Raging Goat. So before we do anything, let's begin with prayer. Our Father in heaven, we ask that as we now begin this study, that you would be with us, that you would take charge of the study, that you would send the Holy Spirit to be our teacher and our guide in all that we do. Help us to understand and learn, and let the holy angels surround us and keep us free from all evil influences. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, so Daniel 8, a charging ram and raging goat. Let's have a look, as we always do. Let's look at the text. So we're going to look at Daniel chapter 8. We're going to read it through together. It's there on your screen now. And then we'll know what we're supposed to be studying at this session. So here we go, Daniel chapter 8. In the 3rd year of King Belshazzar's reign, I, Daniel, had a vision after the one that had already appeared to me. In my vision, I saw myself in the citadel of Susa, in the province of Elam. In the vision, I was beside the Ulai Canal. I looked up, and there before me was a ram with 2 horns standing beside the canal, and the horns were long. One of the horns was longer than the other, but grew up later. I watched the ram as it charged towards the west and the north and the south. No animal could stand against it, and none could rescue from its power. It did as it pleased and became great. As I was looking about this, suddenly a goat with a prominent horn between its eyes came from the west, crossing the whole earth without touching the ground. It came toward the 2-horned ram I had seen standing beside the canal and charged at it in great rage. I saw it attack the ram furiously, striking the ram and shattering its 2 horns. The ram was powerless to stand against it. The goat knocked it to the ground and trampled on it, and none could rescue the ram from its power. The goat became very great, but at the height of its power, the large horn was broken off, and in its place 4 prominent horns grew up toward the 4 winds of heaven. Out of one of them came another horn, which started small but grew in power to the south and to the east and toward the beautiful land. It grew until it reached the host of the heavens, and it threw some of the starry host down to the earth and trampled on them. It set itself up to be as great as the commander of the army of the Lord. It took away the daily sacrifice from the Lord, and his sanctuary was thrown down. Because of rebellion, the Lord's people and the daily sacrifice were given over to it. It prospered in everything it did, and truth was thrown to the ground. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to him, "How long will it take for the vision to be fulfilled, the vision concerning the daily sacrifice, the rebellion that causes desolation, the surrender of the sanctuary, and the trampling underfoot of the Lord's people?" He said to me, "It will take 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary will be reconsecrated." While I, Daniel, was watching the vision and trying to understand it, there before me stood one who looked like a man, and I heard a man's voice from the Ulai calling, "Gabriel, tell this man the meaning of the vision." As he came near the place where I was standing, I was terrified and fell prostrate. "Son of man," he said to me, "understand that the vision concerns the time of the end." While he was speaking to me, I was in a deep sleep, with my face to the ground. Then he touched me and raised me to my feet. He said, "I am going to tell you what will happen later in the time of wrath, because the vision concerns the appointed time of the end. The 2-horned ram that you saw represents the kings of Media and Persia. The shaggy goat is the king of Greece, and the large horn between his eyes is the first king. The 4 horns that replace the one that was broken off represent 4 kingdoms that will emerge from his nation, but will not have the same power. In the latter part of their reign, when rebels have become completely wicked, a fierce-looking king, a master of intrigue, will arise. He will become very strong, but not by his own power. He will cause astounding devastation and will succeed in whatever he does. He will destroy those who are mighty, the holy people. He will cause deceit to prosper, and he will consider himself superior. When they feel secure, he will destroy many and take his stand against the prince of princes. Yet he will be destroyed, but not by human power. The vision of the evenings and mornings that has been given you is true, but seal up the vision, for it concerns the distant future. I, Daniel, was worn out. I lay exhausted for several days. Then I got up and went about the king's business. I was appalled by the vision. It was beyond understanding. So that's Daniel chapter 8. And now let's have a look at the presentation. Let's see, let's find it here. Okay, just give me a moment there, because it's not showing on my screen. There it is. Okay, let's put this into presentation mode. And there you have it on your screen, Daniel 8, a charging ram and raging goat. Now, having read through Daniel 8, I'm just going to give a recap of Daniel 7. You may not have been with us for that study, but it's just good to get a recap of it so that you're aware, because Daniel is talking about, this is the second vision he has. The first vision was Daniel 7. So just let me give you a brief recap of what he saw in his dream in Daniel 7, because Daniel 8 is connected with it. All right, a recap of Daniel 7. Daniel has a dream, and in the dream he sees 4 beasts, 4 which represent 4 world-ruling nations on earth. Then he sees the emergence of the little horn, identified as the Roman Catholic Church, which, although is supposed to be a church of God, is described as speaking against God and persecuting his saints. The Catholic Church boasts that it is able to change God's law and will continue its blasphemous behavior until the end of time, when Jesus comes back to earth and destroys the Antichrist. While the Catholic Church is wielding power on earth, there is a court being convened in heaven, where the people of God are tried in their absence to see whether they are true followers of Jesus. We call this the investigative judgment. This is the judgment only for those who profess to follow God. God's people need not fear this judgment, for we are promised that judgment will be given in their favor. Then we are told that although the Catholic Church appears to be all-powerful on earth, in heaven, Jesus is the one who is crowned as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. That's a brief summary of Daniel chapter 7. So now let's look at Daniel chapter 8. As we said, it's called a charging ram and a raging goat. So 2 years after his dream recorded in Daniel chapter 7, Daniel has a second vision and is greatly perplexed because he cannot understand what it means. While he is pondering, the angel Gabriel arrives to give him the vision's interpretation. This makes it easy for us. We don't have to work out the vision's meaning. We can simply compare it with history to see whether it has been fulfilled. Incidentally, from now on in the book of Daniel, Gabriel becomes a frequent visitor and a real support to Daniel. He takes on the role of vision interpreter, helping Daniel understand the God-given revelations and advising and comforting Daniel as he becomes more and more distressed. So here is the vision of Daniel chapter 8. Daniel receives his second vision during the third year of Belshazzar's reign. As we know, Belshazzar is King Nebuchadnezzar's grandson and the king who saw the writing on the wall in Daniel chapter 5. Therefore, at this time, the kingdom of Babylon is still in power. In his vision, Daniel sees himself standing by the Ulai Canal in the city of Susa, part of the ancient Elamite Empire, which today is Shusha in Iran. He looks up and sees a ram with two long horns. After a time, one of the horns grows longer than the other. The ram is angry and charges towards the west, north, and south. No animal can defeat it or rescue others from its power. It does as it pleases and becomes great. As Daniel thinks about the ram, suddenly a goat appears from the west. It has a prominent horn between its eyes. It is traveling so fast over the whole earth, its feet do not touch the ground. There is a showdown between the goat and the ram, but the ram is powerless. The goat furiously attacks the ram and breaks its two horns. It knocks the ram to the ground and tramples on it. The goat then begins to grow in power, but at the height of its reign, its prominent horn is broken off and replaced by four horns that point towards the four winds of heaven, or four compass points, north, south, east, and west. Then from out of one of the four compass points appears an individual horn, which starts small but grows in size and power. It expands towards the south, east, and toward the beautiful land. Now we can safely assume that to Daniel, the beautiful land would have been Judea, his homeland. The horn also grows in height, even as far as the stars of heaven, and proceeds to throw some of the stars down to the earth and trample on them. It goes on to set itself up in opposition to the commander of the Lord's army. It takes away the daily and throws down the Lord's sanctuary. Through rebellion, the Lord's people and the daily are given over to the horn's dominion. Now we're going to look at the term the daily a little later on and find out what that's actually referring to. The horn prospers and consequently truth is thrown to the ground. Daniel then overhears a conversation between two angels. One is asking the other, how long will be the detestable actions carried out by the new horn? How long will they last? The second angel then turns to Daniel and gives him the answer. He says, it will take 2,300 days, then the sanctuary will be reconsecrated or cleansed. Daniel 8:14, which introduces the 2,300 days period, is a prophecy in itself. And we're going to look at that prophecy in the next two sessions that we do. Gabriel comes to the rescue. Daniel, greatly disturbed by his vision, needs someone to calm him. Therefore, God sends Gabriel, one of his mightiest angels. In the New Testament, it was Gabriel who revealed to Zechariah that his wife would have a son, John the Baptist. Gabriel introduced himself to Zechariah as one who stands in the presence of God. We find that in Luke 1 verse 19. We can therefore trust Gabriel, for he receives his instruction direct from God. Daniel is terrified at the sight of Gabriel and faints. Gabriel revives him and reassures him that he has come to give him the vision's interpretation. However, he warns Daniel the vision is not for his time, but will extend to the end of time. Now, we often see beasts in Bible prophecy, and in Daniel 7, verse 17, we're told that prophetic beasts symbolize earthly nations. And in Revelation 17, verse 12, we're told that horns on these prophetic beasts signify individual kings or kingdoms. So we're going to be coming across beasts and horns as we've seen. We've seen a ram, and we've seen a goat, and we've seen horns replaced by another horn. So these things are significant. And with these symbols, these prophetic symbols, we go to other parts of the Bible to find out what they mean. Beasts in prophecy mean nations, and horns mean rulers or kings or kingdoms. Now, Gabriel tells Daniel the two-horned ram represents the allied nation of Media and Persia. Persia became the more powerful nation of this alliance, thus explaining why one of the ram's horns grew longer than the other. Once again, we are viewing the world-ruling empires as we saw in Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7. This is the third time we've encountered this allied power. You'll notice Babylon, which ruled before Medo-Persia, is not included in this vision. God is homing in on Nebuchadnezzar's dream of Daniel 2, this time beginning with the Second Empire, as Babylon is soon to be overthrown by the Persians. With the revelation that Medo-Persia is the ram, we already know the kingdom that overthrows it is Greece, and true enough, Gabriel confirms the raging goat represents Greece. Its long horn is the Grecian Empire's king, whom we know is Alexander the Great. We also know from the Daniel 7 dream that following Alexander's premature death, 4 Greek army generals, symbolized by its new 4 horns, succeeded him. But as Gabriel now says, they cannot wield the same power as Alexander. In the latter part of the general's reign, a fierce-looking king, a master of intrigue, will arise. We find that in Daniel 8, verse 23. This is the horn that comes out of one of the 4 compass points, signifying the emergence of a new ruler. The horn will become very strong, but not in his own power. He receives his power and strength from someone else. The horn power of Daniel 8 in its early stage is the same as the 4th beast of Daniel 7. It is the power of Rome that came out of the west to overthrow the Greek Empire. Now, as we learned when we did Daniel 7, Rome appeared as a pagan power, but then under the rulership of Emperor Constantine, papal Rome began to emerge, wielding both political and religious power. This fusion of church and state gave the horn power, now papal Rome, its great strength to figuratively reach up to heaven, for it opposed the teachings of the Bible, sought to change the law of God, attacked the ministration of Jesus in the heavenly sanctuary, and labeled as the abomination that causes desolation, as we will see in Daniel 9:27, caused the terrible oppression of God's people. Gabriel's statement that the horn will become very strong, but not by his own power, gives insight into the part played by Emperor Constantine in bringing the Roman Catholic Church to a position of power and great influence within his government. As a convert to the church, Constantine passed laws instituting Catholicism as the state religion and commanding his subjects to adopt the Catholic faith. The Roman papal power also appears in the prophecies of the book of Revelation. In Revelation 13, a leopard-like beast is described, which becomes the personification of the papacy. Revelation 13 verse 2 makes it clear the leopard-like beast receives its power and authority from the devil himself. Could it be that in Daniel 8, Gabriel's description of the papacy becoming strong, but not in his own power, is also a warning that the papacy is an agent of the devil? This is a serious indictment. But when we see the actions of the horn power, we must conclude its power does not originate from God. Daniel 8 verse 10 tells us, it reached the host of the heavens and threw some of the starry host down to the earth and trampled on them. We can compare this verse with Daniel 8 verse 13, which tells us this apostate religious power will trample God's people underfoot. The trampling of the starry host and the trampling of God's people appear to be the same action. In Revelation chapter 1, the leaders of God's church are described as stars, and in Revelation 2, the courageous Protestant reformers of the 14th to the 16th centuries are called the morning star. Therefore, the trampling of the starry host could well refer to the persecution of prominent followers of God by the Roman Catholic Church. A further link between the horn power, the Catholic Church, and the devil is the fact that they behave similarly. The devil, portrayed as the great red dragon in Revelation 12, that's what you see on the left there, sweeps 1/3 of the stars of the heaven out of the sky and flings them to earth. And that's what we're told in Revelation 12 verse 4, thus mirroring the actions of the horn of Daniel 8. That's what you see on the right there, which we are told threw some of the starry host down to the earth. That's Daniel 8 verse 10. As with the little horn of Daniel 7, that's what you're seeing on the left there, the horn of Daniel 8, that's on the right, is referred to as he. This indicates that both horns are spearheaded by a male ruler. The Daniel 8 horn is described as causing astounding devastation, destroying the holy people, and even standing against the Prince of Princes. It seems clear that the title Prince of Princes refers to Jesus, as Gabriel will call him the Great Prince later in Daniel 12 verse 1. Therefore, the horn will have the audacity to oppose Jesus, his teachings, ministry, and followers. This horn power is so strong, it will take the supernatural power of God to destroy it. There is strong evidence that the little horn of Daniel 7, the horn of Daniel 8, and the leopard-like beast of Revelation 13 are one and the same, the Roman papal power, or the Catholic Church, as all three come to power after pagan Rome and display the same blasphemous behavior as shown in this chart. So this is showing us the behavior of these three characters. On the left, you see the actions of the little horn of Daniel 7. In the middle, you see the actions of the horn of Daniel 8. And on the right-hand side, you see the actions of the leopard-like beast of Revelation 13. So let's have a look at how these three characters behave. So first of all, we've got the actions of the little horn of Daniel 7 here on the left. His actions are, the horn has a human mouth that speaks boastfully. It will speak against the Most High. It will try to change the set times and laws. It will oppress God's holy people. It wages war against the holy people and defeats them. The holy people will be delivered into his hands for a time, times, and half a time. Now, if you've done Daniel 7 with us, you'll remember we looked at this prophetic time, times, and half a time, and we calculated it out. It's actually 1,260 years. All right, so let's have a look at the actions of the horn of Daniel 8. It grew until it reached the host of the heavens. It set itself up to be as great as Jesus. It throws the sanctuary down. It attacks God's people and destroys them, trampling them underfoot. It throws truth to the ground. It will cause astounding devastation. It will cause deceit to prosper. It will consider itself superior. It will destroy many. And then the actions now of the leopard-like beast of Revelation 13. It is given a mouth to utter proud words. It blasphemes, that is, it speaks against God. It slanders God's name. It slanders God's dwelling place. It slanders those who live in heaven. It is given power to wage war against God's holy people and conquer them. It exercises its authority for 42 months. Now we can work that out. Again, this is prophetic time that we need to work out. And we found out in the last session in Daniel 7, the formula for working out prophetic time is 1 prophetic day equals 1 literal year. So what we need to do with prophetic time is get it into days, so then we can apply the day-year principle. So to get these months into days, we multiply the amount of months by the amount of days in the month. Now we have to use the biblical lunar calendar, not the modern day calendar, because the biblical lunar calendar is the one that was used in Bible time. So we have to use that calendar. And in that calendar, there were 30 days to every month. So there were 12 months with 30 days in it. So to work out how many days are in 42 months in the biblical lunar calendar, we multiply the 42 months by the 30 days in each month. 42 multiplied by 30 equals 1,260 years. It's exactly the same time that the little horn of Daniel 7 will be prominent and will be persecuting God's people. 1,260 years. All right, so then this leopard-like beast, then it is given authority over the whole world. Right, so these three characters, the little horn Daniel 7, the horn of Daniel 8, and the leopard-like beast of Revelation 13, their behavior is very, very similar. And actually with two of them, they're shown to be prominent and in ascendancy for the same amount of time, 1,260 years. Just a note here regarding references to the daily, which I said we would look at, and we find this term in Daniel 8 verses 12 and 13. Now, some Bible translators add the word sacrifice to the phrase of the daily, so it reads, it, that's the horn, took away the daily sacrifice. Now, no doubt the translators did this in an effort to explain the meaning of the daily. This well-meaning addition thus implies the rampaging papacy will destroy the daily sacrifice performed by the Jews. However, as it was the death of Jesus on the cross, the true sacrifice for sin that did away with the daily sacrificial system, we must look elsewhere for the meaning of the horn taking away the daily. Joshua Himes, in the Second Advent Manual, page 66, commenting on William Miller's study of Daniel 8, states that Miller compared Daniel 8 verses 12 and 13 with 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verses 7 and 8, as both talk about the papacy taking something out of the way. Miller concluded that both the Apostle Paul and Daniel are referring to the same event, namely the Roman papal power overtaking the Roman pagan power. Pagan Rome ruled in the time of Paul, thus it was the ruler of the day, the daily. Moreover, in 2 Thessalonians 2 verses 7 and 8, Paul, like Daniel, prophesies that pagan Rome will be superseded by papal Rome, whom he refers to as the power of lawlessness. This is an interesting title, as it is the Roman Catholic Church that sought to change God's law. History also sheds light on the emergence of Catholicism, for Emperor Constantine's first edict of AD 324 stated the Roman Catholic Church, the Christian church at that time, was to be embraced by his subjects and replace paganism. So that's quite a lot of information I'm giving you there about the daily. But I've summarized it here in this slide, hopefully that it will help you. In the Bible, in the version that you use, it may actually say the daily sacrifice, and you may see that in your Bible, sacrifice put in italics. The reason why it's put in italics is that word sacrifice has been supplied by the translators. It's not actually in the ancient biblical text, in the original. It's put in there as trying to explain what this daily is. But what I'm suggesting here, what I'm promoting, is that that word sacrifice is not the correct word to put in there. The daily means something else. So as I've said, and here's it in summary now, pagan Rome ruled in the time of Paul. Thus it was the ruler of the day, or the daily. Emperor Constantine's first edict of AD 324 stated the Roman Catholic Church, which was the Christian church at that time, was to be embraced by his subjects and replace paganism. When Daniel 8, 12 and 13 refers to the horn taking away the daily, it is making a distinction between pagan Rome and papal Rome. What it is actually stating is that papal Rome will supersede pagan Rome. So the daily is pagan Rome, and it's taken out of the way by the horn, papal Rome. I'm hoping that's understandable. All right, so Gabriel now refers to Daniel 8, verses 13 and 14, which speak about the cleansing of the sanctuary. Remember, I said before this was a prophecy in itself. He says this prophecy is true, but it concerns the distant future. Therefore, he instructs Daniel to seal up the vision. But we are going to look at it because now in our time, this is the time for this vision to be known and understood. So although Daniel was to seal it up, we are able to understand it, and we'll be doing that vision of the 2,300 days, as I said, in the next 2 sessions. In other words, Daniel's God-given role was to record the vision, but not worry about its fulfillment, as this would not come until the time of the end, our time. This is easier said than done. Daniel is worn out. He stays in bed for several days after this experience, and when he is once again able to resume his court duties, he finds himself preoccupied, for he is pondering over what he has seen. That's basically it. That's Daniel chapter 8. The ram and the goat representing Medo-Persia and Greece, which we saw in Daniel chapter 7. These are shown again, and which talk about Medo-Persia and Alexander the Great, and then Rome, which starts off as pagan Rome and goes into papal Rome, and then all that papal Rome does, all the blasphemy it causes, the way that it blasphemes against God, and how God will be the one who actually destroys this power. Now, next time we meet in the next session, we're going to be starting that new prophecy in Daniel 8, verse 14. Before we actually go into that prophecy, you've got to look at the sanctuary, because Daniel 8, verse 14 talks about the cleansing of the sanctuary. And to understand that prophecy, we've got to know what is the cleansing of the sanctuary. And we get all of that in the Old Testament, which talks about what the sanctuary is, what all the furniture is, what happens there, and how the sanctuary is cleansed. So in the next session, we're going to be looking at the cleansing of the sanctuary, which is very important. And we have to understand the cleansing of the sanctuary in order to understand the prophecy of Daniel 8, verse 14. Now, as usual, I'm going to show you this book. This is the book where all that we are doing comes from, the full 12 chapters of Daniel, all the information on that, which makes up the series on the book of Daniel. This is where it comes from, this book. And if you're interested in purchasing this book, you'll find the book is able to be purchased from idiotsguide.org. If you go to that website, you'll be able to purchase the book from there. So that's it. That's our study of Daniel chapter 8. Thank you for joining us. There's some interesting bits in there, maybe some difficult bits in it, but I'm hoping that you got the understanding. And I'm hoping that you'll join us again, perhaps for the next session when we do the cleansing of the sanctuary. So thank you for joining us, and until then, take care, and hopefully we'll see you again. Bye-bye.